Hi, my name's Christopher Anatra. You know me as the Quantum Businessman. Today, I am sitting down with Regina Meredith of reginameredith.com and from Gaia TV. Regina, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to see you. We've got a big event coming up in about a week.
Yes, we have a big event. A lot of people are actually going to be watching this interview on the day of your address, your presentation. So it'll be like a little bit of a primer for people to understand who you are and so forth.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to have this opportunity to talk to you. So I have some questions for you. The first one is, Gaia TV, you have that unique insider's perspective of what's going on in the media's point of view and so forth. What do you think is happening, if anything, related to like topics like consciousness or even the Mandela effect?
You mean in general terms? I think it's becoming more mainstream. I know Gaia, for example, is a viable network in and of itself. I started with them 8 years ago when they were brand new, teensy weensy, small little audience. And even when I started Conscious Media Network 15 years ago, a little over 15 years ago, there was really not much out there by way of streaming media having to do with the subject of consciousness on any level. And now, 15 years later, there are hundreds, if not thousands of sites devoting themselves to each person's version of conscious living, whatever that may entail, from conspiracy to eating raw foods. It's all an elevation of consciousness and engagement of consciousness at a new level. And it's ubiquitous now. And the fact that Gaia has such a massive audience in terms of its subscriber base shows that this is actually viable and is contending size-wise with other networks out there. So yeah, it's growing, it's moving. Sometimes we look at the world around us and we think it's not, but it is.
I totally agree with that. We can definitely see the signs that people are starting to want to expand their consciousness, especially when they see things going on around that they can't, it's hard to like translate what's actually happening.
I think it's important for people to note, and this to me is important. We look at what's going on, and at this moment, we're in the United States anyway, we're in a revolutionary phase. I mean, if you look at it kind of more cosmologically, we're in a revolutionary phase. We can see the signs of it all around us, and we see things that are kind of brutal and disheartening. And at the same time, we're seeing interesting alliances and strange bedfellows coming together to support one another. And I think the point that we shouldn't lose sight of is the fact that where we are now is coming from a higher base of consciousness than we were 50, certainly 100 years ago. Things that were completely unacceptable in the way we treat children, the way we treat spouses, women, the way we treat people from other cultures and races that were just commonly accepted even 50 years ago are now transforming. And those perceptions are now transforming, not in an easy way, but they're transforming.
It seems like whether people like it or not, everyone's being pushed forward into this new consciousness, which is increasing our frequency and vibration. It's like making us get to that level. And
and it's starting from a higher place of consciousness than if this revolution happened even 15, 20, 30 years ago. We're already at a higher place, trying to move painfully to a yet higher place. So this is actually all good news. As frustrating and sometimes even defeating as it can look out there, this is all coming from a higher place to an even higher place.
Okay, so that kind of leads me to my next question, because you have a book called Accidentally on Purpose.
Yes.
And in that book, you have faced a lot of challenges that perhaps didn't seem clear as maybe to their way out, maybe initially, but based upon your life experiences, how would you tell people to feel about these events that are going on?
You mean at large or events in their own lives?
Yeah, I guess both within their own lives and also like on a bigger scale.
I think it's important to keep in mind that life is long. It's not short, it's long. and that whatever is happening in a given moment does pass. And if we're lucky, maybe we've learned something from the moment that we're taking forward. But to me, the biggest element is a sense of faith. We have to have faith in the fact that life has a purpose. All the movements we see around us are being driven by a deeper purpose, that our own life is as random as things can seem in the moment. And accidents do happen. I'm not denying the fact that there are random things that happen and accidents that happen in life, but by and large, life, our life, the life around us, the life of the cosmos is ordered, and it's always moving toward a higher understanding. Even if it dips into what seem to be lower patterns of consciousness in the moment, that might be something no more than showing us what we have to reject, or we have to move away from, or choose away from. So even those darkest moments in life, those most challenging things that leave us like, I have no idea what that was about and what's next. If we're paying any attention at all, we will figure it out. It will make itself clear to us. It may not be right away. So I think that the impulse for having instant gratification doesn't serve us when we're looking at the book of life. We can do that in small ways. Yeah, I want to have a strawberry ice cream cone to make myself feel better. Okay, we can do that. But when we're taking the body of life and the main events of life, I don't think that having instant gratification is serving us. And in the West, in the Western world, certainly in the United States, we have much more of an instant gratification mentality because technology and our lives and our consumption patterns have been set up to have instant gratification. So we expect that to come in the form of relationships, conscious revolution, events that we're seeing around us right now. We expect, like in the next news cycle, there's going to be some gratification. No, these are long patterns of consciousness that have taken a long time to become instilled and will take a long time to evolve. It's not going to happen overnight. I'm not one of the people that believes we're just going to become a shimmery fifth dimensional person and all our troubles are over at the snap of a finger because someone's saving us. I'm not in that camp. I'm in the camp evolution. We're part of evolution. The choices we make, how we interact with them are what create those changes we're waiting for. So we're part of, if you say there's a problem, then we're part of that, but we're also we are the solution. So I think we're the ones we're waiting for, not to be too cliche about it. And we have to step up and have a little broad thinking and patience and compassion for one another, because these are not easy times. It's very easy to fly into judgment, but that's kind of, again, an instant gratification thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of wisdom in what you just said there as well. People are waiting to like almost transform into something magical and mystical overnight. And that's not the way it's going to be, but
not in the cards.
But there is that new wave of consciousness that's coming in that's going to give us new ways to do things. And I think old structures, go ahead.
No, absolutely. I'm agreeing with you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, even like these structures that have kind of worked not well in a lower consciousness, they're just going to go away, and we're going to find new and innovative ways to do things that we just couldn't in a lower consciousness.
Yes, and I think that's one of the things interesting is about the human species. And because I interview every kind of person on every kind of subject, including the subject of our government's interface with species from other planets and other systems, one thing that's always intriguing about the human species from all points of view is our incredible creativity. You know, we have the ability to almost on a dime when necessary, change. We have the ability, even on a dime, look at what happens in these extreme situations where some tiny little person can literally lift a heavy object in order to help another person that's suffering. We can change even on an atomic level. We have incredible capacities that way if we understand the nature of what's going on. And the nature is pure energy. What we're going through, the impulses coming and waving through our cosmos, waving through our solar system, through our planet. These are winds of change. These are energies that are demanding change at this time. And we know it because anyone watching this has lived through a time of relative peace where it's like, things are noodling along. Life feels pretty good. I can kind of have my preferences set and it's going to go that way. Well, that's not where we are now. And that is opulently clear if we look around us. So again, the capacity then to creatively address it, just like you said, and decide away from what doesn't work. Because all of these things, even, as we kind of rage against, women have raged against the patriarchy for a while now, we have to stop and look. There was a time when that left side of the brain, very male, kind of focused mental dynamic, was very productive on this planet. It helped move us beyond and into certain ages, some of which had undesirable elements to it, like the age of industrialization. It took advantage of people. It made people commodities. It created kind of mindless consumerism, even exploited child labor. But on the other hand, it put us into the technology that allowed us to have the kind of homes we have around us, the kind of towels that we dry off with after a shower. All of these things of our material life came from that age, which can be used responsibly and beautifully, or we can really crank it out and have it kind of ugly. The same thing is going for this next era, the same thing with the digital era. We've moved into it. It's allowing you and I to have this conversation. It's allowing us to be able to interact with people during the conference in another week and a half's time. It's allowing for beautiful connections to take place and a flow of really innovative and meaningful information. At the same time, we've also become slaves to it. So we can't say, you can't just throw everything out and say, oh, the patriarchy, that era of patriarchy was a bad thing. It had its place to accomplish what it did. Now we've integrated those aspects of life, and it's time to move on and start merging back into what we call more collaborative or more feminine energies. Feminine energies are more dispersed, they're more inclusive, they're more collaborative. And now that we've seen where we can get with very male focus, we need to see where we can blend and enjoin that male focus with this ability to collaborate and invite in and include. And so now we're at that place in life. And as you can see, there have been a lot of protests around the world. They're continuing. We're having a hard time. People that don't want their ways and their life and what it looks like to change are having a hard time, because now we're having to be embracing of each other, because we've all been faced with such incredibly unacceptable cruelty. That's okay. I mean, it's not okay. It's not okay for the people that have suffered, but to be faced with it, to recognize we have these fears. I mean, this is the thing. I did an interview, I think just yesterday, with Simon Chikoisky, and we were talking about the protests going on right now. And he was saying quite wisely, we're all inherently wired primitively to fear the unknown, to fear other, whatever other is, whether it be a person of a different color or an alien or someone in the workspace that does things differently than we do.
Or the latest version of Windows.
The latest version of Windows,
yeah.
or the latest update of Apple, whatever.
Right.
We naturally fear the unknown, including technology. I'm big on fearing technology, right?
Right.
And that's okay to say, hey, I'm scared of this. I don't understand this. I don't know what this means for me. I think to not beat ourselves up. And I think what often happens, especially in kind of, you might say, kind of newbie spiritual communities, is, well, like, oh no, I don't feel that. It's all love and light. Don't have to acknowledge that. That's not being truthful. I think for us, we are at a point now where it's time to get real, time to be truthful, honest. A strapline on my site, reginameredith.com, is truth matters. I believe truth matters. And that's including the uncomfortable facts that, yeah, maybe this person over here is making me feel uncomfortable. I don't know where they're coming from. Don't know their background, their motivations. Take a breath and then open up and try to see into someone else, something else's perspective. With me, the Holy Grail will be if I can open up and become comfortable speaking with this computer and not feeling like it's out to get me.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, that's really cool. I think too, the topic of our conference is revelations. And I think the world is getting ready to have revelations, just more understanding, more, as a higher consciousness is brought in, more clearly understanding of things. some of the things we may not like, but it'll still be a revelation. It'll still be things we need to understand and learn from.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to ask you a question because in your book and otherwise, you've spoken about, this is kind of seem like it's going off topic, but it's really not.
Okay.
You've spoken about communicating with dead people. And as I say this, there's like something backing up in in the background.
Garbage truck day. Yeah.
Yeah. So for the Mandela Effect Conference, I was doing a presentation on what a timeline paradox is. And you know what, I'm gonna pause the recording here for just,
yeah.
It stopped. Oh, it stopped.
There you go.
We're back. About what a timeline paradox is, I was researching NASA, and I got visitation by an astronaut, a deceased astronaut, and I had communication, and it caused me to create a special video that I'm going to release with the Mandela Effect Conference on Sunday, which is Father's Day. But when you've communicated with dead people or from another, frequency, I'll call it, how did that work for you? Can you shed any light on that? Because I want to see if I can compare my experience to what maybe you've experienced.
Right. I think it's probably important as a backstory that I had been communicating, you can say, listening to guidance for a long time. And I've never been one to say, I mean, honestly, I have an idea of who I might be communicating with, but I would never say anything and lay it down in stone, because the higher aspect of ourselves, the higher mind in the soul, is literally so ephemeral, so ethereal compared to this dense conscious mind that we have. For all we know, we're communicating with aspects of ourselves that are simply in the unified field with these other things. But that said, I get distinctly different patterns that do come in. So I'm just saying that as a caveat. Sure. That do come in. And there will be certain signatures. It'll be an intensity of energy. It'll be a tone of voice that I'm hearing, and so that I can identify. So in the different cases, people that I spoke with, sometimes, well, in each case, I summoned them. Okay, they didn't summon me. So I simply said, look, if you're available to chat, let me know. Or I would talk to my guides and say, hey, what happened here? And then the being would show up, or some aspect of the being would show up. So to me, it is part of just a long process of my being in a still state and listening over decades. And so in listening to dream time and understanding that sometimes dreams aren't dreams, they're actually entities that I'm interfacing with in another dimension, and starting to feel my way through the difference of what that feels like as opposed to a dream. I'll know when I've met someone in dream time. It's distinctly different. The signature is different. The same thing if someone is coming to genuinely speak with me from the other side, whether it's being translated through some aspect of my higher mind or coming directly from them, it has its uniqueness to it. And the messages, it's been crazy. Some of the messages, usually there is a need. In one case I can think of, a desperation to let me know something that's happened. In another case, someone needed to, this was funny, a man who is a very complex character, intelligence communities, Britain and America, but also a very devout spiritual Christian, not religious, but spiritual Christian, did not believe in speaking with the dead, right? Well, we had a mutual contact that ran afoul of something and ended up dead. The next morning after I found out, which would have been 2 days after the death, so a person's still nearby, for example, in that place, their energy's still right there. It's easy to access people. I just sat down thinking, I don't know what happened. And he came rushing in because of the nature of his death and the technology that was involved that had been left behind, and explained everything to me, just downloaded me. I took it to our mutual contact, the intelligence community Christian who didn't believe in this. I didn't tell him. I said, I got this information from our contact. And he said, oh, that's exactly what we were talking about just before he died. When did he tell you this? And I said, this morning. He said, Regina, he's dead. And I said, yes, I know. And I said, that's what he told me. Well, he had a hard time coming to grips with it. So when this man died, he felt comfortable coming and speaking with me. And so he gave me cues. And he said, go see so-and-so in London, because he knew I was going over to England. Go see so-and-so and please deliver this message for me. So I went and delivered the message. And the young man needed that message and started crying. This is what he said to me all the time. That's what he used to call me. So these things have had enough validation for me that I'm comfortable doing it. You have to get your sea legs here, because our minds are tricky. You can't just take everything at face value. I've learned over time through validation, those and other events, that, okay, I never hold that I'm 100% correct on anything in the translation or what I've heard, but I will take the bones of it to the bank, so to speak, in terms of thinking, no, if it feels like this and it comes like this, it usually has accuracy to it. Even if I can't validate it in this moment with a third party, I'm going to listen to what they have to say. So that's how it works for me. You?
Very interesting. Well, I'm kind of new to all this, and first of all, I have to totally agree with you, because you need to get validation. Your higher consciousness, or whatever tools you use to audit, to make sure that you're actually talking to that being, because there will be, or could be, imposters.
Yes.
For myself, what happened was, so I'm doing this research about NASA, and then in the evening, I go home, getting ready to go to sleep. I put my phone in another room. I look at the clock and it's 11:11, and all of a sudden I hear my phone go off, and it's some show about the Boilermakers of Purdue University talk about the Gus Grissom story. And I'm like, Gus Grissom, who's this? And I had all these other synchronistic type events start to happen. And then it even got to the point where I would see what I would describe as an orb. And inside that orb was like a person wearing one of those silver astronaut setups that they used to use in the Mercury Redstone projects. And I'm like, Gus, is that you? And I have this thing I do with muscle testing, kinesiology, to try to verify the information. Right. And yeah, and then just started getting information, and then like videos start popping up for me. I'm not even searching for them, and they're coming up about random things. So I took that as a definite sign. And actually in the video that I made for Father's Day, someone spotted an orb flying around in the video. So
yeah,
I think for everybody, validation. I think for everybody it's different, but I also think that as these frequencies start to change, like it's not just going to be me or you. There's going to be a lot of people maybe having, whether it's this experience or another, we'll call it a mystical experience. And people are going to be searching for answers and for information that are totally unfamiliar with this.
True. So, and the thing is, it's happening around everybody all the time. It's only our willingness to pay attention to the clues or see them. Because a lot of time, if we have a habitual life, for example, where we have our expectations, we have our routines, we have our likes, dislikes, our preferences are all checked, and we're kind of going about life on autopilot. And that's most of us, most of the time. That's what humans tend to do. If we don't literally alert ourselves and say, look, self, please find a way to get my attention when something of import is happening around me and I may not be noticing it. If you have to make me, bump into something, make me bump into something, whatever you have to do to get my attention. My guides have taken extraordinary measures to get my attention at times. And so, because I wasn't paying attention. So I think if we have that agreement with higher self and say, look, please let me know. I don't want my own life. I don't want the goodness. I don't want the higher guidance to pass me by. Find a way to communicate to me that there's something going on. And then I think if you can, these are two simple things. If you can make that agreement and tell your higher self, I want to know. Don't, please, I want to know. And then in that moment when your attention has been gotten, when you've given it your attention, stop in the moment and think, what's going on around me? What was I just thinking about? And try to notice what's in that moment. You really have to be in the moment. That's where all the information is, in the moment. So I think if we just do those two simple things, if we're not used to being able to have that communication openly and freely or at will, those are the two, I think, really good beginning points. You just have to let your higher self know, and your guides. We have guides and our higher self, which makes it more interesting. Let all of them know, I want to be alerted to the things that really matter, that are flying by me on a daily basis, that will help me deepen my understanding of life, my experience, see opportunities when they're in front of me that I'm not seeing, like that.
Like
That makes sense?
that makes sense. And so ask them, because would they do it otherwise, or are they looking for like our authentication to say it's okay? How do
I
you
think
feel?
they're always trying to get our attention. I think the higher mind, the soul, and the higher mind complex is whispering to our conscious mind, or in Hermetic parlance, there's soul and higher mind complex, and there's intellect and lower mind complex and subconscious. So if we look at it from these complexes, the part that is receiving these impulses from the soul, these finer directives and desires of the soul, are always whispering to us. It's just that a lot of times it's not even coming close to getting our attention. So if we make this conscious request and agreement, I want to hear those whisperings. And then even if it's kind of jumbled, even if say you trip over something, say, oh, my guides must be speaking to me. No, you may have just tripped. But nonetheless, take a moment and say, okay, that was not very nice, but you got my attention. Is there something here for me? And just play with it and play with it and play with it until you actually start seeing something more coherent happening. Because it will over time. You'll say, no, that was just a trip. No, this one, I saw it. Everything went into slow motion. And I took that step anyway and tripped, and think, aha, someone was trying to get my attention. I'm not programming to trip. Erase that part. But I'm saying that's the difference between those two experiences. One is completely unconscious. The other, you start seeing where the consciousness was around it. And in my case, things that where I'm supposed to pay attention, big things, often the world around me goes into slow motion. And it's like, okay, pay attention to what's going on right now. Pay attention to my perceptions, feelings, and thoughts of what's going on right now. So these are just little hints. You have to find your own, everybody has to find their own means of communication, but I'm giving just a couple little tips on how you might start the endeavor if it's not already in place.
Yeah, that's great advice. I call them nudges. So
Yeah.
like every once in a while it feels like something's flicking the back of my ear, and I'm like, that's a nudge. So I gotta like wait for the little flicking, which is
Yes.
better than tripping. So
Better than tripping. I
get
get
to my
one that's like a noogie on the top of the head, tingles over the top of my head. So that'll happen oftentimes. Or a feeling of like something melting down my forehead. My eyebrows have just fallen to my chin. And then I'll know that's very specific. That means a very specific being is looking to talk to me now. Pull over.
wow. Okay, that's really fascinating. That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, I appreciate that. And like as we're talking, I'm thinking to myself, if I were to watch this video that we're making now, like 3 or 4 years ago, well, first of all, I would have never believed I was making a video like this, because I was very much implanted into another consciousness. I'll call it a lower consciousness. So as we expand, our family may not get it, our friends may not get it, our workmates may not get it. What kind of advice do you have as far as like speaking your truth, and how do you balance it all?
Well, that is every classic newbie's mistake, including mine and everyone's. Once we start seeing things in a new way and we think, oh my gosh, the secrets of life are little by little revealing themselves, we want to tell everybody. That's natural. That's an evangelist. Doesn't matter what the information is, scientific or otherwise, we become evangelical. And you have to just stop and think yourself, how do I like it when evangelicals approach me to tell me of their newfound knowledge? Most people aren't comfortable with that. So we have to assume it's not for everybody. It's for you. You've just learned something that really means something to you. And if you have even one confidant that can kind of swing with you, hang with you while you go through this, someone you can talk to and confide in that won't make fun of you, you're lucky. because a lot of times we're on our own. I was pretty much on my own. And it's when I first started learning this. But very quickly, within a year or two in, I had a whole community of people that were like that I was part of. So in the very beginning stages, I think it's really best to not try to proselytize, evangelize. I think it's best and not look for that little tiny opening in a conversation where someone says something. It's like, oh, I bet I could slip that in right now. You don't necessarily have to do that. You might just push it a little bit. You might just say, you know, I read something about that recently. If someone says, oh, really? What was it? And have an actual open inquiry, then I would feel more comfortable to engage them at that point. But believe me, I have been through this journey, this journey every which way, and still to this day make the mistake of trying to offer information to uninterested parties. And so it doesn't do anyone any good. I think you really have to use your discernment as to who you share this with. And do it with an inquiry first. Don't just blurt it out, and see if there's any interest and even openness to it. So discernment is the key, and to a large extent, just keep growing inside yourself until you can see there are people around you that support this kind of thinking and who you can comfortably share with. And it can be very lonely, because I started doing this maybe 35 years ago, a little more than 35 years ago now. Well, arguably more than that, but solidly 35 years ago. I was into everything, channeling, quantum mechanics, all of it. Nobody, vegetarianism, nobody else around me was. And well, needless to say, I became quite a bore to my family and my friends.
Yeah, and I think what happens too is that when, like, so let's say when you talk about Mandela effects, or someone talks about that, for some people it may not resonate at all until something happens to them.
Right.
Then they seek you out because, oh, you're the person that knows about Mandela effects. I just spotted something I can't figure out. So it's almost like almost that waiting mode too.
Well, it is. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, I just came across the weirdest subject. You know, put it, so you and I are in this together. This is strange stuff. I'm going to tell you right now, kind of blew my mind. It's strange. Still trying to make my mind up on it. Now, if you do that, you're not pedantic. You're not putting yourself in a position of authority. And so you can say, it was just really kind of weird, but have you ever seen anything like this? Oh no, it can't happen. End of conversation.
Right. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And I'm going to ask you another question, just something. You've traveled a lot. You've been many different places on the planet. One of the places that you've been to is Egypt. And
I actually never made it to Egypt. I went to Israel and I was in India, but it's the oddest thing because I have a connection with that historically inside my being. We can call it past lives, reincarnation cycles. Very intense connection with Egypt, but it's kind of an uncomfortableness, queasiness, discomfort, probably mildly akin to a type of fear of revisiting the land. And I think it has to do with the traumatic nature of something that happened in the past. So I actually keep saying every year, I'm going to jump on. I'll jump on with Freddie. I'll jump on with Carmen. I'll jump onto somebody's tour and go to Egypt with them, but I never make the time to do it.
Very interesting.
And that is a repulsion from the past. No, I don't mean repulsion, but it's repelling me away, something from the past. Either I'm not ready to address or that it might be just so darn different that I don't want to experience that. I don't know because it's subconscious at this point.
Right. Okay. Because one of the things that I was reading about was that, like, you would get revelations, and one of the things had to do with like Egyptian hieroglyphics.
Oh yes, that happened in a cave in Israel. I was in Ankara in Israel in the cave of John the Baptist. How do we literally know thousands of years later that these are the actual spots? We don't, but I can say this. The area of town of Ankara is devoted to John the Baptist. It has 2 churches there devoted to them. They're beautiful. One of them is so beautiful. It's all blue and white inside. Went there for Christmas Eve that particular year. But prior to that, I had been, I think the day before, It was either the 23rd of December, or it could have even been that day. No, it was the day before. I went there and to Ankaram to go and just check out the monastery around the John the Baptist baptismal well. And he was known as a rebel. He was a seer, and he was known to go outside of Jerusalem up into the rugged hills and do this. Well, that is Ankaram. For us driving, it's not that far out of town, but it would certainly be a trip on a donkey to get there. And they have a baptismal well, but above the baptismal well, which I'd never heard of, is a cave. It is, to me, of course, it was a profound event when I went in there, because I was expecting nothing. I was just going as a tourist. So I went into this little cave. I was with two other people. They looked around, said, "Oh, cool," and walked away. And I thought, no, I want to sit here for a minute. And I sat on one of the teensy little chairs in the cave, and boom, a show of historic proportions on a personal level for me, a metaphysical personal level for me, started. And everything was just lined up. It's like everybody'd been called from central casting, all of my old guides and everything. It's like, okay, psst, she's here, she showed up. And I sat down, and boom, the show began. I mean, a massive orb descending from the ceiling. And I felt like I was at a surprise party without the right clothes on. And I'm just watching everything go on. And part of it, and my guides were there. Now a friend of mine, my meditation partner, had also joined in metaphysically. Her being was present in the cave with me. And again, this validation piece I'll put together in a minute. And so during that experience, one of the things that happened is I was downloaded with hieroglyphics, but they were primarily focused, not just that, but pictographs and glyphs that were focusing on the hand positions that we see in all of the Egyptian artwork. And the artwork isn't artwork. These are literal depictions preserved historically. The Egyptians didn't do things just for kicks like that. These, especially during the higher eras, these were preserved to preserve knowledge. And so it was showing me every position of the hand, you know, this way, that way, this way, and what it all meant. And I thought, why is this happening? Because it was going so fast. My mind at the time knew the meaning of each thing, even though it was going, but when it was over, I couldn't remember a thing. And I thought it was downloaded into my aura. And I still, to this day, have not taken the time to go and to recapture or deconstruct those hand positions. I haven't been motivated to, but and this happens with me a fair amount, where something's given and it takes a while before I follow up. But that was all downloaded into my aura for reasons yet to be discovered. But there was other information I needed right then that was also downloaded at that time. So on the validation part, I left the cave just, you know, with a new understanding of myself, information that had been given. And I went to call the person, the human being, who was my meditation partner, who had shown up in the cave with me. And she didn't answer. She called back about an hour. It was too early in California time. She called about an hour later and said, I'm so sorry I didn't answer. I was dreaming you and I were somewhere together. I said, oh, let me tell you where we were together. And so I proceeded to explain to her. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay. That makes sense. And someday you'll have to figure out what all those different hand gestures mean.
Well, one thing that the guides that I work with have said for all these years is, if you want to know your future, learn to read the hieroglyphics, not as other people have already interpreted them. Read them one at a time, take it on as a project, read them from scratch, go inside, allow your own self from your higher mind and memory to be downloaded with what they mean, because the meanings aren't always correct. The ones we see right now, some translations are good and some are not good, but they said the answer to our future is hidden in those hieroglyphics and glyphs.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, I should take the time, shouldn't I?
At some point you might. As a matter of fact, tell us what is in the future for Regina Meredith. I know you've got projects going on with Gaia TV and so forth.
Yeah. Well, one thing that's in the future, and this has to do with social media and really what's happened to it, which I'm not happy with. I'm not happy with the direction it's going and shutting people down, limiting our messages. I'm not, I don't really want to be part of that. I don't enjoy it anyway. So what I'm going to be doing right now, I'm shooting all of my interviews for Gaia in the next 10 weeks, all the interviews for the year in the next 10 weeks. So I'll be on a tear for a while. After that, I have freer time. Then I'm just doing interviews for reginameredith.com. And we're going to start a new community platform. I've looked at them for a year now. I didn't like any of them. Finally, we found one. I'm not saying this to be a sexist, but it's designed by a woman. So it has the graphics and the fun and the visual sensibilities that I resonate with. So once I have cleared myself of all the Gaia interviews, I'll have the time, and we're going to start this community, and it's our own platform, and we'll invite everyone in. All the people who support me on Patreon and beyond will be invited in, where we can share information without the intrusion of Zuckerberg and the others who are limiting our messaging. We're not going to be influenced by that anymore, where we can feel free to tell our truth to one another and share information that might be a little more edgy, that might not be as politically correct as one of those social media platforms would prefer. And I'm tired of the hypocrisy of it. Donald Trump was tweeting things that were actually inciting violence. And Mark Zuckerberg said, I have no right to limit his freedom of speech. Yet they shut down my site. They shut down many other people's sites.
They shut down your site?
They did. I have it back now, but it was shut down. Yes, it was shut down. Because I was talking about something apparently they didn't agree with, and their algorithms were programmed to detect, and it wasn't anything harmful. I'm shut down, but you can incite riots among people? No, I'm not part of that anymore. So I'll finish up and do a few more Facebook posts, and then it'll all be on our private platform. So that's definitely one way I'm going. Another thing I'd like to do is I have a couple of kind of documentaries that I would like to do that I think will be very empowering on a very intimate personal level for people. So I just have to get my head clear that I can take on another project. Right now I can't do my site and Gaia and take on new projects. I don't have the brain space for it.
Gotcha. We'll look forward to seeing you more on Gaia TV, and the new platform that you have, that when you come out with that, that'll be good, because I know even myself, my YouTube channel's been what they call shadow banned.
Yes.
Which means you can find me, but it's really, really, really hard to find me unless you know exactly what to type in.
Yes.
So
it's the same with me. I don't even come up in the first page or two under my own name on the net. So part of that's not good search engine optimization. Part of it is by some other design I'm not aware of.
exactly.
So I'm tired of the games. So let's just create our own platforms. You know, we just have to support one another. I think that's really the way it's going, and put our energy and put our support where our hearts are, instead of just kind of being gustatory consumers. Oh, I'll taste a little this and that. There comes a time where you say, wait a minute, I'm not really resonating with that body of thought at all. I'm not going to cruise there anymore. I think I'm going to cruise over here where I actually find some messaging that makes me feel whole or inspired or fresh in some way. And I think that's, again, this instant gratification and so many options. We literally waste so much time just cruising. And yeah, we can build a body of knowledge fast. That's great. But I think we're coming to a time now where we need to put our energy and our resources where our actual upliftment and hearts are.
Good. Awesome. I really appreciate that viewpoint. In conclusion, I would like to ask you, have there been any type of Mandela effects that you've experienced yourself?
I have. Some I don't really, I don't even know what to attribute it to. And some of them are simple little goblin types of things, and I think I've talked with Cynthia Sue about this. One of them is this time shift reality where I was in, my son and I were in Paris, and we were moving through the transit system. And I saw a sign that said one thing, and I'd never been lost in the underground there, in the metro, or the underground in London. I'm pretty good at reading that, and I'd been there a lot. And I saw something completely the opposite of what it said. And I jumped on, and I literally was so disoriented, I thought, why did it say that? This is actually the opposite direction. Everything in my being, as far as I know, saw it exactly the opposite direction. So by the time we made the first stop, I thought, this is wrong. This is the wrong direction. We jumped off, ran across to the other platform, got back in, ended up where we had started so we could catch the train the right direction, right? Just ran up to get the train and the doors closed. We missed it. Had I not had this, I don't know what it was, misdirection, time shift, alternate reality occur, that train blew up. It blew up. It was all over the news, all over the world that day. It was
fascinating.
Yeah, that train was blown up as an act of terrorism. And so I was very grateful. My son and I was like, oh my God. I mean, because we were just all sweating in the underground, in the metro station. Like, what's going on? It's August, it's hot, and no trains are coming. An announcement came on, everybody gasped, and it turned out our train that we just missed, because we were the first ones up to it that just missed it, literally. Right. So the crowds built around us. They said, I couldn't understand French that rapidly, and they explained the train had blown up. So I've always wondered, what reality did I drop into to make me do something I had never done before to stop us from getting on that train? A lot of people died on that train. So that's one of them. Simple little things like I lose an earring, right? And I'm looking everywhere. I cannot see it. I know it came off when I was changing clothes right there in this space. This happened at Gaia in my little office there. And I thought, dang, I can't find that earring anywhere. How could it just disappear? And so then about 3 months later, there it was, lying in the middle of the floor, mind you. Now, Robert comes through and vacuums that office every single day. So 3 months later, it appears right when I walk in the middle of the floor so I can see it, right? That kind of thing happens fairly often. I think those are little goblin things that are just kind of funny. We don't know what's flipping in or out there or why, but I do experience that kind of thing quite a bit. So one's more dramatic and one's simple. Those are two little examples.
Yeah, so I would call those, you definitely are aware of timeline shifts for sure. Mm-hmm. Have you ever, this is another random question, have you ever heard of a product called Stouffer's Stovetop Stuffing?
Yes, but it doesn't exist, right?
Yeah, that's one I usually ask people about, because it's never existed.
Absolutely. So, and the thing is, most of them that Cynthia has shown, because I've done interviews with her,
right?
That is the way I remember virtually all of them. And I'm thinking, come on, how can I be that delusional? How can my mind have been that off? But yes, I remember Stouffer's Stovetop Stuffing.
Yeah, that's one that I explain as something called a timeline brand takeover.
Yeah.
That's a whole other subject for a whole other video on another day.
I love it. I love it.
But Regina, it's been awesome talking to you and getting to know you better. And now I'm really looking forward to your presentation at the IMEC 2020.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it as well. And thank you for having me on. I really appreciate the time.
You are very welcome. Very welcome. Thank you, Regina.
Thank you.